Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's Brave Cat here once again with another Frontier Signals update. So looking at the sun here, things have been relatively quiet, but we do appear to still be in a enhanced solar wind event with just some minor flares and stuff going off, almost kind of rhythmically. So we go up here, we look at the X-ray flux, and we see pretty consistent, very small flares, so nothing big, and just a little bit of magnetic instability here, with the KP index briefly reaching a G1 storm again. So the solar wind itself still seems to be somewhere within 400 to 600 kilometers, which is definitely still elevated, but we haven't had anything too major going on. But there has been a couple of pretty notable seismic events as well, which I will cover that here in a minute. We got, the coronal holes turning away, and right now we have this directly facing us. So it's a smaller coronal hole kind of on the north side, and then this kind of area here, which is something in between a coronal hole and almost like a plasma filament. But it definitely kind of looks a little sinister, but I don't think it's really going to do too much here. It's surrounded by other plasma filaments as well. So as long as all those regions stay pretty stable here, I don't think there's really much that can happen from that. And taking a look at the far side, we do have these three kind of separate regions over here on the far side, but it's kind of hard to tell exactly what's going on over there. But either way, it doesn't really look like much. So I don't really expect to see too many more active sunspot regions coming to face us anytime soon. But, things like this can always change on a dime because, you look at the sunspots at any given moment, and as they go and travel on through, they're always morphing and changing, and we're still technically in solar maximum. So, yeah, anything could still change, but currently things look pretty optimal here, even looking at the magnetogram. There's not really too much magnetic stuff going on here. This sunspot region has gotten a little bit more complex. We've got some opposite polarities kind of squished together a little bit more, and something over here down on the kind of western or eastern limb. So that always threw me off because I guess the left side here is actually called the eastern limb, which would be different if we were looking at the Earth. I don't know how that works, but that's pretty much what we're looking like there. Not really much on the auroras here. So we're going to have to take a look at the earthquakes, primarily because, well, there actually hasn't been a lot of volcanic activity going on in the last couple days. So we go back to the 20th. We do have Stromboli over in Italy having some elevated activity. But other than that, everything is pretty much as it has been or less than that. So it seems like this has actually taken a back seat. There's not as many ongoing eruptions overall. And even looking at today here, pretty much see the same story here. Nothing out of the ordinary, really. Pretty much all the same locations having the same activity. So that takes us into earthquake world here, where we do have still less tremors than we've had earlier in the month. And then we take a look at earthquake 3D here. And we did have that 7.0 earthquake over by Japan. So if we take it over to this view really quickly, we can see exactly where these plate boundaries intersect with each other. And that is precisely where the 7 struck. So, I don't think there was much of a tsunami from it. If it was any bigger, that could be a significant threat throughout the Pacific, but it wasn't like an 8.0 or anything at least. So if we just kind of sort through this here, is a 7.4 with a decent amount of aftershocks here in the 4 and 5 range. So that is definitely going to kind of impact the surrounding plate boundaries going forward for several months to potentially even years, as we had all the activity down here very early on in this year. There was multiple 7s and a whole bunch of 6s with some pretty deep activity happening in the kind of southwest Pacific. And then even over in Italy, so we had that very deep, very large earthquake that struck over here more than a month ago now. And since then, we've now started to see ongoing deep events. So we have another one, and this appears to be almost directly below Campi Flegrei, Mount Vesuvius. So, looking at the map here, looks like that earthquake struck pretty much just a little bit southeast of Naples here. So pretty close to these magma chambers, and definitely going to have to keep an eye on that moving forward, as I'll just keep saying that because it is going to be a thing to keep watch on moving forward. Especially with, how big of an event happened here that was deep. That is going to impact things for many months to come, just as all the other activity has. So we had, like I said, all the sevens that went on over here. And now we seem to see that stress kind of breaking over on the other side of the Pacific. So over here on the west coast, we've had some more development off the coast, even going up here into Canada off of Vancouver and going all the way down here. So especially given just the last couple days here. So let's take it to about there. And all right, let's see, what was this event here? It's like we had some more fours striking this region in Nevada. So it's definitely gone way past the time frame for aftershocks in this region, especially following a 5.7, I believe it was. Seeing this many fours and all this other activity, we can pretty much rule out aftershocks at this point. It is just completely started swarming. So, and I mean, this just is a running theme now in the United States. Just looking at, I guess the last 7 days, because why not? To take down the rings so we can actually see what the heck is going on here. So we have arguably multiple tremor swarms ongoing over here in Texas. Most of these are over at drill points or even new drill locations. So we got, like, we could say one here, and one there. So 3 just in Texas, although that is putting things a bit loosely because it's such a large area and there's so many different locations being hit. And we even have, some scattered activity on the east, but it's mostly about what's going on over here. So there's a couple tremors up here by Yellowstone, but then we see the stuff going on in Utah, Nevada, and then California just is pretty much permeated with different tremors at all times, with, I believe, the one over here by the San Francisco Bay being the one that could be kind of the temperature gauge for any major activity on the West Coast. And now we've been seeing an influx in activity off the coast as well. So things have not stopped developing in this area in terms of just plate movement and overall unrest and, stress in the actual plate itself. There's a lot of stuff going on in Alaska as well, but, this is more or less a little more normal, so there's always a bunch of stuff going on over here. But even that does seem to be a little bit more than usual, with quite a few moderately deep events, and, it's just kind of carrying over from what we see going on over here. So after this 7 here, we could definitely see some larger activity creeping in over to the Aleutian Island chain. And even down here by Hawaii, there's still lots of tremors going on over there. Maybe a little bit above normal. I mean, it is pretty seismically and volcanically active at all times. So it's not really too much of a surprise there. And we still had another 6 go on over here, with some of that pressure moving out down to the Antarctic Circle. So definitely quite a bit of stuff going on here. Not even, it would take, a very deep dive, kind of hour-long video to really go over everything. But, there's other people that do that as well. So, again, the main watch zones here are going to be Europe and the West Coast at this point, with, Japan kind of being in the peripheral as well. So, just kind of see how things develop here and try to observe the different patterns going on the best we can to see if we can figure out what might happen next. So anyways, I think that's going to wrap things up for now. Still kind of just kind of going along here with stuff on the website. Things have kind of slowed down, a little bit MIA the past couple days, but trying to get back on things now. So anyways, that'll do it for now. So I hope you all enjoyed, got something out of it. Please like and subscribe for more. Share this video if you dare, and as always, I'll catch you all in the next.